most likely they got older clients who are gonna like push back on technology hardcore. They're most likely billing ridiculously low prices to start, so you're gonna have that uphill battle. And the worst part about it, I think, is that those clients will forever compare you.
Accounting's just a hard thing to push further. So the same things that are blocking AI solutions right now are the problems that have blocked folks for the last couple of decades. So like there's a reason that there hasn't been a new tax suite in 25 years. So I bought an 80-year-old practice, and it was a big old ship to steer, and it was about a $5 million practice. But there was no part of me that was not 100% convicted that this firm wouldn't be operating much more profitably than it was in my hands. What I produce and put out there like has to be useful to somebody. I think it's helpful to be relentlessly aware of the fact that nobody gives a crap about you. They honestly don't. Like they care like, what can this do for me? You get beyond a threshold where it's like, oh, people kind of build this like parasocial relationship with you, and they're like, no, tell me about your life. But it's like, that's not like the only reason they're there to begin with was because you solved some sort of problem for them.
Welcome to another fun episode of the Fun CPA Podcast. Today on the show, I got the one and only Jason Staats in the building. Jason, been following you for a while, and it's an honor to have you on the show. For those of you who don't know who you are, can you give them like a 60-second Jason Staats intro?
I mean, if you're making like a tier list of fun accountants, I think I got to be pretty high on that. My background, I used to run an accounting firm, was a 15-year tax pro, launched a CAS practice in there, and a couple years ago just started doing thought leadership content online, and so now most people know me from YouTube and social media and that sort of thing.
Awesome. It's pretty solid. You did much better than 1 minute. Well, I was gonna say, I wanted to start off first of all saying that I was very disappointed that you did not make the top 100.
Top 100.
List of accountants. That was a very sad post we did the other day, telling you didn't make it. I was rooting for you because I feel like you're adding a ton of value to the accounting profession, teaching us all about AI, automation, and how you can help us. What do you feel like is the biggest challenge with the accounting community and AI technology in general?
Accounting's just a hard thing to push further. So the same things that are blocking AI solutions right now are the problems that have blocked folks for the last couple of decades. So like there's a reason that there hasn't been a new tax suite in 25 years, and why everybody's been telling us for the last decade, oh, our proprietary data, we're going to be able to classify transactions automatically. And they've been saying this for years. And it's a lot of the same stuff that they are still saying. Like it's all the same talking points, and that accounting is full of these rote, repeat procedures. It's just not as repetitive as people think. Like the things that you do, like, yes, the rules that we're all working by are the same, but what makes it non-repetitive is that the context is different for every single person. Like tax work is in no way repetitive. Yeah, there's government forms, but we've been pulling automated stuff off of those forms for a decade plus. Like it's not repetitive stuff that we're still doing. So AI is going to change the way that any kind of work gets done. So it's absolutely coming into the stuff that we do. 100%. Unfortunately, I still find that the conversation is the same as it was a decade ago, though. Yeah,
I was talking to the other legendary Jason earlier today, Blummer, and I was talking to him, and we were saying that accountants in general, we're so change resistant by nature. To get an accountant to implement or even consider technology in general seems to be difficult, and to get them from looking at it to going forward and implementing it is like pulling teeth. I find it myself. I'll be perfectly honest. Like I'm not an old school guy by any means, but when it comes to some of the technology out there that's available, I'm like, then it's going to change up the way. Like it's that initial sting of like implementing it that's scary, but you got to get past that, man. Like it's so important for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most of the profession, the problem is a lack of incentive. So like the business owner's excited because they see the upside, but their team's paid to sit in a chair for 40 hours a week. And they're like, why aren't you as excited as I am? And it's like, because they're not as interested in lining your pocket as you are. And the solution for that is like production-based pay. Like, it's just better aligning the incentives of the owner with the team, so that when you come in and you're like, gang, I'm pretty sure that this change is going to save us a bunch of time, they can be as excited for you because that actually means something to them, rather than just their 40 hours being more inconvenient than they were before.
I like that concept, production-based. But, you know, there's so much talk, obviously, about the profession, about, you know, a pipeline problem, about how to bring people in, about how to motivate them, you know, and quite frankly, it's like, like you were saying before, the things that were being done for decades or before are still being done. The same push for the billable hours, you know, raw billable hours. You know, when you were in the tax game and you were, you know, running a firm beforehand, and like were you able to implement some of that, like the production-based pay or some sort of other way to kind of keep the staff engaged and aligned with your kind of way of doing things?
I wouldn't say we got it as far as I wanted by the time I was headed out the door. So I bought an 80-year-old practice, and it was a big old ship to steer, and it was about a $5 million practice.
Wow.
So we for sure took a lot of really healthy steps away from when I came in. It was a full hourly firm, and every partner was invoicing every single thing themselves. We got off of that to where we moved, you know, almost 2,000 projects a year to being, you know, fixed fee billed up front. And at that point, then hours become one of several proxies to determine, are we happy with the outcome of that project?
Yeah.
I think our relationship with time got a lot healthier. I think timesheets have hurt so many people. They despise timesheets when it's really the fact that timesheets are used as a stick that's the problem.
Yes.
Ultimately, I left it in my team's hands to decide, do we still want to track time or not? And they unanimously decided, you know, we've got people all over the world working on these projects, and it shouldn't be the only metric that we're relying on, but it certainly should be one of them. So I think we made a lot of really good changes in the 3 years that I did own that firm. Not fully around yet to production-based pay, which I think the bigger your firm is, like the more time-consuming and harder to pivot that becomes.
Yeah, it's like it's like that saying, you know, it's like, obviously when you have a cruise ship-sized boat, you know, changing course is difficult, and I think, you know, changing the way that a large top 100 firm is going to do business with thousands of partners throughout the United States or the world or whatever it is, it's not happening. It's not realistically happening anytime soon. It needs to, but I want to go back for a second, because I wasn't planning on going this direction with you, but I feel like I want to explore this a little bit, and I want to talk about the challenges of buying an 80-year-old firm.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm subscribed to APS, the accounting practice, you know, the one that's selling accounting practices, and I'll get, you know, the message every once in a while, hey, an accounting firm is for sale. But I'm so not against that, but I'm so like hesitant and like get the bad vibes from that even thought. Reason being is that to me, when somebody's 60, 65, 70 years old, whatever it is, trying to sell a practice, most likely they got older clients who are going to like push back on technology hardcore. They're most likely billing ridiculously low prices, you know, to start. So you're going to have that uphill battle. And the worst part about it, I think, is that those clients will forever compare you to good old Bob, who, you know, was doing things that Bob didn't do it this way. And, you know, no, you're over here with your technology. And so what was it like for you? I mean, obviously, I guess you were working there, so you had an idea of the client base, so that maybe made it a little easier. But tell me a little bit about that journey of buying a $5 million firm, because that's no joke.
I knew enough about myself to know that where I'm best at is more working on the business than in the business, like not being in client service, like setting strategy, attracting better people, attracting clients. That's where I'm best. I mean, I was never that. I was a passable technical person, but like my skills are definitely in managing leaders, and so building something from scratch probably never would have made sense for me. On the spectrum of modernization, this firm, well, it had a lot of pretty old-timey values. I mean, it was not like I see paper firms, and I just see no way that you could ever touch those with a 10-foot pole.
Agreed.
We weren't in that bad of a spot. I had built maybe a third of that practice that I ultimately ended up building. So it was something where I had already built a like distributed team. We had people all over the world. It was a lot of like my fingerprints and a lot of that stuff already.
Wow.
But yeah, still I bought out several of the former partners, and it was just kind of a mixed family of a whole bunch of different things, from staff that had been hired from different people where like they're scared because you weren't the one that hired them. Same thing with clients to sort of a different degree. In my case, to be able to come in and be able to wear the non-client facing hat from day one, that was the biggest thing to me. And I didn't have to go out and buy a $3 to $5 million practice outside of that, and what I could put together with those partners would have been a different beast.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, that like you kind of go through life and you kind of do one step in front of the other, and you kind of get trapped in the game that everybody around you is telling you to play, which at a small firm is like, oh, go for partner. And it's
100%.
It's not until later that you look back and you're like, oh, the world's bigger than you thought it was. You kind of had tunnel vision for the circumstances you were in. I think I still would have done it the same way, because there's a tremendous amount to be learned in just the grind that is change management also.
That is huge.
Yeah.
It's such a, especially like your story is interesting, right? Because first of all, what I got out of it right away is that what you just told me about how you were able to have so much like control, autonomy, even as a non-partner. Or were you already, well, sorry, I guess I should clarify. Were you a partner before you bought out the other partners?
I wasn't a partner, but I had built a CAS practice to like 1.5 million. So it was a pretty big part of the business.
Wow. So that part right there, to me is very rare. And what I mean by that is building up a whole practice on your own within a firm, especially from my experience where I've been, without, clearly you had autonomy to do whatever, hire whoever you wanted to hire, build it out however you did, and you were very successful in doing so, but that is rare. Now, that's cool that also then you got to work out a way to buy out the rest of the firm, but I'm guessing you were able to step away from like the kind of day-to-day and technical and all that, because when you bought, they already had, like, it was self-running at the time? Or were the old partners like they were still doing technical stuff?
They were all very traditional partners. So that meant bringing in new people that could run those engagements. And
wow.
Yeah, so it was a very traditional partnership model firm. So you pull basically 3 partners out over 2 years, and you've got all the issues that come with that. So having to hire higher level people than they would ever been willing to hire before, and paying more for people, and those folks being able to manage engagements and figuring out how do you keep people that are that high of a level around long term? Like what's interesting to them? Do they have to be on a partnership track or not? And just kind of building a more traditional org chart around me and a partner and a team of 40, rather than like a 4-partner traditional firm.
Interesting. Did you have those conversations with every person there? Like, I'm very curious on this process because it's a very unique thing you had. Were you sitting down with every single person and kind of checking in what motivates them?
Yeah.
After you took over?
Yeah, I think you have to, especially when you're coming in and, when I started with this firm, I was like maybe 25. And
wow.
So they see my progression through like being this snot-nosed, they're all the same people.
Yeah.
But even then, when I came into the firm, 2 years later, we acquired the last firm that I was at, and those are phenomenal people there, and I got them all to come and buy into what we were doing. But yeah, like that evolution of that relationship, and the fact that many of these people have been with this firm for decades in an environment where it's a traditional partnership setup, which does not encourage a real high-level person. It encourages, hiring minders. Like a lot of these people didn't even want to be client-facing. They'd never been given that permission.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yeah, and so we are like, that was the environment that had been fostered because that worked best for that partnership structure. And so to come in and say, like, y'all are getting a promotion whether you like it or not, and like we're looking for the people who are going to like step into, you're going to manage relationships now, you're going to do some stuff that may feel uncomfortable initially, but you are so much more capable of it than you realize because you've been doing this stuff for 15 years. So yeah, that's a really spooky thing for people, and you kind of got to work through that with everybody one by one.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenging thing, and I feel like, at least what I wanted to ask you too was like, how do you structure like that buy? Like, I mean, I don't know if you can necessarily talk about it, because I feel like some people, when they think about buying and acquiring a $5 million practice, it's scary. I mean, it's scary enough to buy a $200,000 practice to figure out, what are you going to put down, what that's going to cost you a month, like all those things that, if we can go back into the Jason brain, however long ago it was, what was, how did you structure that and kind of get comfortable with that buyout?
It's tricky because it was a lot of stuff getting bought out all at once. And I think it was on like a 10-year horizon. So, you're consuming a ton of the profitability of the firm to service that debt. And so you just end up way upside down, a fat, juicy K1 that just goes straight out the door to tax, and debt servicing.
Yeah.
So there, in a situation like that, like growth was a must.
Yeah.
One nice thing about that business is we had loads of tax clients, but it wasn't until I launched the cast side that we started doing anything besides really annual tax work.
Wow.
So like, important to me from a strategy standpoint was, how do we make these more premium tax engagements? So how do we lean into tax advisory that's going to pay 3x what our traditional tax work would pay? And then how do we handpick out of this client base, the couple hundred businesses who are best suited for a CAS offering, and that like 5 to 7x the LTV of each of those clients. So like the deal without growth, that deal and that buyout really almost doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm buying the business for what it was, with the ambition of, we've got a lot of legacy pricing where we can make really big improvements on that, and that's going to drive a lot more profitability. So that, honestly, almost all that debt servicing, like the way I saw it was, I have to get this firm to a more profitable place for that to ever even work. Like if I didn't, I'm basically clearing virtually no cash and just servicing debt and paying tax, because there's so much equity getting paid down at once.
Yeah, that's where my brain went. I mean, my brain honestly went to like me trying to tell my wife and like having that conversation of like, so are they gonna buy this $5 million firm? We don't got any money. They don't got no $5 million. And I'm sure, that was probably a tough conversation and tough decision to make. Or were you like, nah, I'm doing this like I'm 100%. It's not even.
Oh, I never had any doubt. I mean, what made it great was the notes were going to each of the partners. So like, in terms of getting it done, it was vastly simplified to going out and doing SBA or something like that.
It was like seller financed.
Yeah, and so we could still have the flexibility to go out and refinance that a different way down the road if we wanted. But there was no part of me that was not 100% convicted that this firm wouldn't be operating much more profitably than it was in my hands. And so that was like the conviction I had at the end of the day, where it's like, I could see the, the historical financials and everything that these people have done to get it to this point.
Yeah.
There's no reality where this goes backwards, with how upside down a lot of the pricing was, and how I knew like we're going to have to do some pretty aggressive increases and some people are going to leave, but nowhere near enough to make us go backwards. Like,
awesome.
There was, at the end of the day, like there was no scenario where I thought we would really end up upside down.
That's awesome. And how long did it take you? I'll end this trail here with this one. How long did it take you to kind of, once you took it over, to start seeing that upside, to start, seeing that growth and the restructuring and all that, and getting above the debt service?
It was immediate. January 1, after I bought them out, prices went up. Like, as much as 300% on some folks, but a lot. And
you see attrition when you did that?
Some, but not a ton. Our profitability went up a massive percentage basically the day I took ownership. So it was I'm a little burnt out on change too. So like legacy firms, not super sexy to me. Yeah. The reality is, with most firms, the cash cycle is so bad, where you're taking payment in October for tax work you start in February, and it's so underpriced, and folks are so slow to leave.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be a pretty spectacular level of attrition for you to not come out ahead just modernizing pricing, pulling the cash cycle forward. That was the experience in this firm for me. And as much as the bigger blocker for me than the client base is the staff, because if I can't bring the staff around to my way of doing work, then the work just doesn't get done, right? So that would be my bigger concern in future acquisitions.
Yeah. No, it's a lot to unpack there. Let's so you buy this firm, you start working on that, you're getting things out the door, you're getting more profitable. When does Jason go from being a firm owner, leading and empowering people, to content creator Jason out there on YouTube and all that, driving value? And what were those first videos like?
They were every bit as bad as you would expect. So the very beginning, and this was before I'd even bought the firm, I wanted to learn about email marketing. It was like kind of peak email marketing. And I was like, this just seems like a useful skill to develop. And I'm a real tech dweeb. So I just started basically sharing a roundup of like new tools for accountants each week. So I started this newsletter. Launch for Accountants was what it was called. And every week I'd share, I think, 6 tools. And then one week, and this was not big by any means. One week I put a Loom video at the top of what was the most clicked on tool from the previous week. I did like a 90-second overview. That's me on my laptop webcam.
Yeah.
And I just ran through that. 5 times as many people clicked on that video as anything else in that email. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I like begrudgingly do it the next week, and then the next week. And then the production value goes up, and then we start putting them on YouTube. And the reality is, I published 2 videos a week to YouTube for 18 months while running a 40-person firm and even having a child in there. And I didn't miss 2 videos every single week.
Wow.
And at the end of that, I had 500 subscribers. That's why I'm good at video. Like, and I've continued since then. Like, it like anything else, it comes down to pouring more effort and sometimes money into something than anybody else would think is reasonable. And then on the other side, people will say that you're a natural.
It's funny. I want to, it's such an interesting point you just made. 18 months, straight, you're going at, you're making the 2 videos a week, which is no joke, between doing it, shooting it, finding the time, running a 40-person firm, $5 million+ firm, doing all these things, having a kid. Geez, man, like doing all that. And then at the end of it, you get to it and you've got 500 subscribers. Like,
no, there's a real, like, what am I doing with my life sort of thing. Yeah.
And every once in a while, I have this all the time. If you're a content creator, whatever content creation it is, posting or videos or whatever, And it's like, there is the true definition. Like, Gary Vee talks about it all the time. Obviously, you gotta do it for yourself. Meaning it's gotta give you value, and you gotta get pure enjoyment out of that stuff. Because anybody else with a rightful mind will be like, I just spent a year and a half doing 2 videos a week, which will easily take you at least, if you're doing the editing yourself, at least 5 to 10 hours between shooting, thinking of the content and all that, to get a whopping 500 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep.
Well,
so my secret weapon was, like, I learned that I loved video, and it was a fun, just kind of stupid creative outlet. And that is the single best advantage people have, is what's the thing that doesn't feel like work to you that feels like work to everybody else.
100%.
But these days, like, to the Gary Vee of it all, I mean, all of media is being decentralized and cable's going away, and like people consume in algorithms. Even the last 36 months, I mean, they're just about nobody is offline anymore. Like, people would say, oh, how do you go and find farmers and stuff like that? All these people are online now.
Everybody.
And society is separating into creators and consumers. And it's not this influencer thing. It's not like you are either a creator or a consumer.
Yeah.
And I know what side of the equation I want to be on.
Yeah. And I feel like it's important to have the passion too, and it's important to obviously enjoy that, because some people, I feel like, and sometimes you can tell, like they're doing it because they have to be there, but to do the thing you enjoy. And what I like about yours and what's, I think, unique to you too, is that you're really good at solo, like just Jason on the screen with no guests doing this. It's like almost like you're talking to yourself for just hours, but you're very good at that. And I feel like I personally can't, I struggle with that. It's not for me.
Yeah. I mean, I started, so we're 390 episodes into a podcast that's almost daily. And that didn't start until I'd done, 2.5 years of YouTube videos. And, the YouTube videos are from a teleprompter, and they still are. Like, I script all those by and large. And so they're writing ahead of time, and then it's me learning to deliver that stuff. But the podcast at that point, I had over 100 videos under my belt. And so it's like I had enough of those repetitions. I'd also been writing on social media for over a year at that point. And I really think the more you write, the more you have to say. So
very true.
I do, people do tell me that a lot. Like, how do you sit there and just talk to yourself about this stuff? And it was harder in the beginning of the podcast than it is now. But even at the very beginning of the podcast, it wasn't the beginning of me doing that sort of thing. I'd already done some version of it for years. And so I just kind of developed this weird muscle that nobody just has.
Yeah, 100%.
And then over the course of doing the podcast, you figure out how to lean into kind of like recurring formats and stuff that takes a bit of the work out of like reinventing the wheel every day.
Yeah, 100%. What was that moment for you? Like, was it after the 18 months, your 500 subscribers was probably not the moment where you thought, this is it, this is me. Was there like a moment that you go back to where somebody, like maybe somebody reached out to you, like that, that was a CEO or I don't know, whatever it is, or somebody or something that happened that you were just like, all right, this is it, I got to lean into it like even more heavy now?
Not as much as I think we would like to believe, that there's like that one sort of sexy moment. Yeah. I mean, what ultimately made it a business was I launched a paid community that started as just like, we just need a more private place to share what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And then that developed into an actual business. But I've been a couple times like, I at one point, I ran a zero firm, and I loved HubDoc. That like at its peak, that was such a powerful tool. And the two Jamies that were the founders of HubDoc, like they were just kind of legends in the tech space, and I'd seen them speak at, Zero Cons and stuff like this. Yeah. And at one point, Jamie McDonald reached out and he's like, hey, I'm a fan. And I'm like, you Jamie McDonald, what do you mean you're a fan? And we hopped on a call, and there was a little bit of a moment there like, oh, dang, like this is a way to make connections. Like you forget about all the people that are on the other side consuming it and how it gives you a pretty amazing level of access that you wouldn't otherwise have.
100%.
I think for accountants, just for anybody out there, even folks that work for somebody else and they're like, how am I going to find what I do next? Like, you don't exist until you're like out there and visible. And there's so much value in simply being visible. Like you doing this podcast and making this show and talking on LinkedIn and all of that. Like, it's sort of magic and like this kind of spin of the cosmic wheel of like, maybe it's going to enable some sort of serendipity where if you don't play that game, like honestly, nobody knows that you're there.
Yeah. I mean, magic is like a wild understatement to what has, I mean, I've been posting on LinkedIn for like 3.5 years. Then I started the podcast. Every single thing that I've done, like, you know, podcasts I started in May 2022 was because in, you know, March of 2022, I didn't want to do taxes in that particular month, or like really, I just needed a break for my brain. So I literally was like, what am I going to do? I'm like, no, just like my mind would wander off. I wouldn't want to do the work. And I was like, podcast. Yeah, right. Let's do that. You know, and then I started getting all that, started looking into microphones instead of doing taxes because that was much better for me. Fast forward to March or April of 2023. And then I sit there once again, I don't want to do the tax work. So my mind is wandering and I'm like, I want to do networking events. And that's what I want to do in May of 2023. And so I just started calling around people, boom, boom, you know, made this happen, got that, and then rolled it out and had 50 people there on my first one. And that was a little bit of a rowdy party instead of a networking event, but it turned out fun. But the point is, you know, it really hits, for me at least, it was when I was asked to like come speak. You know, I know you do some speaking stuff, you know, and travel everywhere. But for me, it was like my first one, and I got to go to California, to San Diego, and I was like, this is nuts. Like I was sitting there at the airport, and I'm like, I don't know if you ever had this moment, but I'm just sitting there at the airport, and I'm like, I'm going to speak. Like these people paid for me to fly. Who am I? Like I'm not like Gary V to the point of what we were chatting about before, but to circle back to, you know, kind of bring it full circle here, like, yeah, man, like being out there, doing your thing, enjoying what you're doing, which translates through, for at least for me, on what you're doing, 100% that you're enjoying it and you're getting enjoyment out of bringing value. But that stuff translates and radiates like crazy. And being you is the key too.
Yep. Yeah, what's the stuff that you're into, and not being afraid to put that out there. It's really hard to disassociate ourselves from ROI that we have control over. I think that's probably the main blocker of accountants is you're like, how am I going to spend this time in a way where I'm going to get this back? But like to your San Diego point, my wife and I went to the Women's World Cup final last year in Sydney.
I think I saw that.
And it's like we're sitting there just in the most like, I mean, 18 months prior, I was running a firm in a small market in Oregon. And it like, there was no part of me at that point, as I'm sitting there with 500 subscribers, that thinks, well, okay, let's just stick this out another year, and then maybe we'll go to the World Cup final. No part of you is planning for that. And having a willingness to lean into serendipity, like, I mean, I posted on LinkedIn recently. I'm like, if you commit to posting to LinkedIn every day for the next 365 days, like your life will change. Like it just will. Not in a way that you're going to expect right now, but just being that visible and making connections, like you will have access to things that you could have never otherwise willed into existence with this intentional plan of, well, I'm going to do this and this and this. It's like that misses the point.
Oh yeah. I couldn't have said it any better. And more specifically, posting, but just being you. So like being the authentic you on social media, posting not for any reason. Like I don't post nothing. I don't post to get clients. I don't post to get anything. I just post whatever's on my mind, and with the end goal of helping others in some way, shape, or form, whether that's by seeing the accounting profession as being more fun, or whether it's just, you know, make some people laugh with some rap lyrics. You know, I feel like that to me is what it is. And yeah, the serendipity, the magic that happens once you do that consistently is wild. and then connecting with people and networking at scale is really what I feel like LinkedIn, at least for me, is what it is.
The bar is so low on LinkedIn right now too. Like, it is the best platform for finding people right now, but the supply is such low quality. It's so much backslapping, and like I've got a threshold where like what I produce and put out there like has to be useful to somebody. Mm-hmm. I think it's helpful to be relentlessly aware of the fact that nobody gives a crap about you. They honestly don't. Yeah. Like they care like, what can this do for me?
Yeah.
You get beyond a threshold where it's like, oh, people kind of build this like parasocial relationship with you, and they're like, no, tell me about your life. But it's like, that's not like the only reason they're there to begin with because you solved some sort of problem for them.
Yeah.
And just showing up and like being relentlessly helpful is so hard for us to get our heads around, because it's like, well, I got this project on my desk and I could bill it out if I got it done. Why would I ever spend time doing this other thing? But it's just a totally different game with, I think, much juicier opportunities on the other side of it.
Yeah. That struggle you just described, I was laughing because that is my daily occurrence.
You got that project on your desk right now. You just closed Drake Tax as we were starting
I just closed Drake Tax. I was closing just this. By the way, that shit was open for so long and I didn't do anything. It's because I was too busy. But I was at a bunch of other calls beforehand. And, and so you're just sitting there and the day goes by and the amount of times I go, all right, well, I created a video today. So that's what I did. That Drake Tax thing, that's going to be a tomorrow thing. And sometimes we live by that all too much.
You know what that is to me, though? Like, that is a gift. Like, that is the best gift I was ever given, that I would rather make a video than sit in front of a tax return. And so many people will spend their entire life running from that, when there's not that many weirdos in our space for whom they would rather make a dumb video than do tax stuff. But I think we're wired from our childhoods where we're told that people are naturals, like the Usain Bolts of the world. You know, they're just so good at this thing. And that's like the first 20 to 25 years of your life, as the naturals are winning out. But the next 40 years of your life are dictated on like who's putting in the most reps. Like, that's who wins. True. And the people who can put in the most reps are the people for whom it doesn't feel like work. So I can make more videos because I enjoy making more videos, and in the end, I'm better at videos. And that is your greatest competitive advantage in life, is to 100%. Be able to lean into that.
And to take that even further is to doing that while having, 55 subscribers on YouTube. Yeah. Or while doing that while, making funny Instagram videos that you only think is funny.
Yep.
Posting that, and the amount of times that I would post something and laugh hysterically by myself in my house, which sounds crazy, but then post that and thinking this is going to blow up like crazy, to then literally hearing crickets a week later with 200 views, and I'm like, damn it, like I thought this was like, but that, to your point, is what but when you can keep going after you've done that. Or you can keep going after something flops. That, like, what even is flopping? Like, I feel like that's the thing that we all get hung up on, right? I've had times when, like, I would post something and, you look at the LinkedIn metrics and blah, 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 and it's, like, dwindling down. But one person messages me and is like, yo, that was so good. Like, it really made me reconsider something. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna keep going now. One person out of the millions and millions of impressions.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get fixated on vanity metrics when depth is much more important. There's a deeper version of all this that isn't optimized for reach, that is much more impactful than, making a cat video that 6 million people will watch.
It's true. It really is true. It's like we're so focused on that, but really providing value and potentially changing millions of lives is what it's about. And it doesn't mean you have 5 billion, impressions. Yeah. To go back to that, and we'll kind of end on this train here because I'm surprised a little bit where we went, but I'm digging it a lot because I feel like this is really important for any creator out there. But I think for me, if we go back and we kind of chat about for the solo accountant out there, for somebody who is starting their firm outside of going on LinkedIn or posting or doing whatever those things that we're doing, from a technology standpoint, the stuff that you see every day, you play around with software, what technology is there out there to make a solo accounting firm owner like myself, be successful with their firm?
It's actually a pretty exciting time for tax. We've got some innovation in the last 24 months for the first time in a long time. The biggest thing right now is tax intake tools have gotten vastly better. So the kind of tech augmented firm has never been more exciting and powerful than it is right now. As a percentage of revenue, you're going to burn more on software than ever before, but we're asking a lot more of software than ever before. There's the awesome thing, which I really try to help drive myself as well, is there's better information out there than ever before. 3 years ago when we were at peak webinar, every single webinar was being put on by our software vendors. And so where do you go for independent information to know what's good and what isn't, and who versus who just has a marketing budget?
Yeah.
I fell into a trap a lot, and I see it every single day on social media. It's really easy to get lured into the notion that you found something that nobody else has found, and I'm gonna figure this, and I'm gonna be the first one to ever do this.
Yeah.
When, man, there are so many really smart firms out there that I look up to where I can see, what do you use? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And had I just leaned into very obvious best practices and seeing what other folks do, I would have saved years of zigzagging and playing software night janitor, having to fix all these things. And I think we can make it harder than it needs to be sometimes, rather than following, who are the people that are doing this the best?
Yeah. Or getting out of our own way of this is how I've done it. Man, if I was to tell you, if I told you, how I'm literally just now about to change the way that I had an Excel with the clients' names and the monthly billing for those that are monthly, who is quarterly, literally in little columns. Mm. And then I carried that over into another column past that where it said, engagement letter sent, engagement letter signed, what was next? Documents sent. And literally I would X, and use a sort, the sort to then figure out what was left. And I don't, my firm, I don't, thankfully, I'm blessed in the sense that I do have higher paying, higher value base. So my minimum fee is very high. And so I don't have a ton of clients. I got about 100, so it's been working, but to change that, I've been staring in that thing every year and I'm just going, I feel like this is dumb. And I feel like something can do this so much better than this, but I'm but this works.
Yeah.
And then, man, I highlight, you're going to laugh at me, man, but I highlight, when I send out the invoice, when I would send it out, I would highlight it yellow that it was sent out, and then green when they paid. I felt like a freaking dinosaur. Because I know, and then recently I spoke to Tal over at Anchor, and we had a nice chat, and I just signed up for it the other day. So I'm literally, this is live, man, but now here's my pain. My pain is, now I got to get all these clients over, my list of clients over from my tax dome over to, to theirs, so that they're all in there. And then, got to do that process, and that's painful. And then, putting the engagement letters in there and doing the services and doing all that little part that literally in my brain is telling me, just copy and paste that Word document and change it to 2025. That's all you have to do. It's that part of it that's challenging, and not all of us are as tech forward. Not to say scared of it, but just like we were talking about offline. It's that hesitancy of taking that leap. What do you say to people like that, like me, on that cusp?
That's the biggest upside and downside of being a solo shop. Is that solo shop is a reflection of everything that you are good and bad at. And there's no hiding from it.
Nope.
It is sheer force of will to get yourself to do that stuff that you don't want to do. Yeah. Whereas hiring a team oftentimes is a great band-aid for fundamental issues where the solution is, well, let's just hire more.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually solve the problem. But the nicest aspect of hiring a team is you hire people for the stuff that you despise. Like we had a lady who she loved calling people to shake them down for money, like overdue invoices. Like she took so much satisfaction out of it. And I'm like, you must have been born on another planet to me, but bless your heart, and I'm glad we have you.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's such a good point, and the inflection points that we hit, like I'm at this part right now, I'm just shy of 250 gross, 250 gross, and I'm, it's at the point now where I don't work that much. Like in the tax season, I work less than 40 hours. In the, in off season, I'm at 10 to 15 hours. That's how I built the firm. That's what I'm doing. So it's like hard for me to get out of my, I'm like, I need a staff. Like I need someone else to hire for a few reasons, but like to keep growing past where I'm at, that's where I need to be at. But at the same time, I'm like, if I hire someone, like, what am I going to do? Like, man, I'm already working on under 40 hours a week. So like during tax season, so like, I'm going to work less, but it's like, it's this weird point.
Yeah. I don't know that anybody in the history of humanity has ever not found something to do. But that's always what we say is like, well, if we delegate this or we do that, like, what will my value even be?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like, how many years you got left in the tank? Like, stuff outside of work. It's not just work. There's always another thing to do, another video to make, another person to meet, like country to see. The like freedom of time, like that is the greatest. The greatest agency you can potentially have, because a lot of people that will go out and do their own thing and be as even more trapped than they've ever been before, because they have this team they got to answer to and they have no control over their time, even though it's quote unquote their thing.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of these, like the community, like Logan Graff, rolled out that community for people who are just starting. I think it's huge. I mean, communities are also becoming like a big thing, but I feel like that early stage accounting firm owner has got such a vast options, pricing, right? The lower the pricing, the more people you're going to get. The more people you're going to get, the less freedom you're going to have. It's just guaranteed. You build out a firm with 500 clients, it's rough. You're not getting out of that very easily. You might make good money, but you're not getting out of that, and you're back at 80 hours. And so that freedom that we yearn for when we open up our own firm to do things however we want to do them. But if we don't do that right on the outset, sometimes it's so difficult to flip the script on that. So I think that's huge.
You also run the risk of overanalyzing, because the fact is you won't do it right in the beginning. Like you just won't.
True.
And if you can give yourself permission to do a crappy version of it, like it's just like starting on video or something like that. Like the biggest thing blocking people is all the things they're afraid of getting wrong. And I think if there's a different mindset of, I'm going to screw it up, but let's treat this as a V1.
Yeah.
And these aren't going to be my forever clients no matter what. Your first clients will never be your forever clients.
True.
And what Logan's doing, and I think arguably the most powerful content in the profession in the last 5 years has been Logan sharing how much money he makes each year.
Yeah.
Because people watch Logan and they think, well, if Logan can do it, then anybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
Which I tell him, not even vaguely insultingly, but
but it's true though. It just brings to life the fact that so many of us don't want to do it because we're scared that we can't. We can't do it. We can't make. I was making $150,000 before I quit, and I had we had my son, and it's like you're sitting there. The biggest thing to me was honestly health insurance, but like once you get past that hurdle and you think to yourself, how am I going to make $150,000 again? Like it's easy. Really, but you got to go out there and you got to jump in and swim a little bit and have that vast open field. But also I tell everybody, just get a consulting gig, man. Like that's the best way to start, in my opinion. Get that consulting gig, $7,500 an hour, 75 or $100 an hour, and do like 20 hours a week at the very beginning, and start tapering that off once you keep on building the way you want to. Gave me $8,000 a month, man. Like that kept the lights on.
Yeah, I think that initial scary time is shorter than most people expect it to be.
100%. Well, man, I think we're going to have a part 2 to this. down the line, because there were so many places we could go. But this has been so great in many ways. I think we got some good conversation. I appreciate you making the time to come through. Just leave us off with, where can the people find you, and why should they reach out? Who should reach out to Jason? And we'll leave off with that.
I'm on all the socials. Wherever you hang out, you'll find me posting sometimes useful, sometimes silly things about being an accountant. Yeah.
I'm just a big fan of your selfies, man. Which that angle just kills me every time. It's good stuff, man.
People get so caught up on like glamour, and I will meet people in person who are like, "You got to stop that. It's awful."
Oh my god.
And I'm like, those posts get such good engagement because they're just the most ugly picture I could ever take of myself.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it great in my mind. And that's why like people connect with it and they'll reply with their own super ugly selfies.
Yeah.
And
it's the like, authenticity. You're changing the game of what the online perfect life is. Everybody looks online. Everybody thinks you're a multimillionaire, with everything has to be perfect and this and that, Ferraris and all that. But here we are, here's Jason doing a selfie with the most, non-flattering angles, or, Yuri over here on his bicycle sweating profusely and, and posting that. And that's all it is, man. And the posts don't got to be perfect. Nothing's got to be perfect. You just got to roll out there and try it. But thanks again, man. Again, I appreciate you coming through. We'll definitely have to do a part 2 and to the next one, man.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.